All right, Mike, thank you so much, firstly, for hopping onto this podcast, owner of Digit Lab. Please tell me and the audience a little bit about yourself and how you got to become an agency owner and how you got into SEO.
Sure, man. Bradley, thanks so much for the invitation to be here. It's always good to talk our game. There are very few geeks out there that really appreciate it, so it's good to know. How did I do this? I remember speaking at a high school reunion thing, not reunion, one of the graduation days, and one of the things I wanted me to address was how do you become a CEO? And I said, it was quite easy for me actually. I started a business and then I put the word CEO on my title, and then I was a CEO. Um, and and I think that very simply that is what happened. Like we started a business. We kind of knew what we were doing. We were one of the first into the social media game. That's what we started out in. I worked in a business prior to that in the music industry, and we had no marketing budgets. The only way we could market our business was to use social media, and it was very new at the time. This is like 20 years ago now.
Wow.
And so I kind of cut my teeth right when it was still like MySpace and all of that sort of stuff. And so coming out of that, I had a fair amount of knowledge on the social media side, and everyone was hunting for it. So we were quite blessed and encouraged to see quite a lot of businesses, specifically in South Africa, and a few globally that were quite interested in the work we were doing. And I wouldn't, in hindsight, say it was particularly brilliant work. I think what helped us there was we were one of the few doing it. And we learned and we never got better and better at what we did. And I think that is entrepreneurship, that is business, that's startups, that's anything. It's just you start doing something and you figure out what you're doing wrong and you fix it. You carry on.
Definitely get better and better at it. Awesome. And I mean, like,
Started from there and ended up really in the SEO game because it was so imperative to clients' digital space.
Yeah.
And I just learned everything we could.
100%. And not many people back then, I mean, you started quite a while ago. Not many people back then knew what SEO was, and now it's just thrown around like a buzzword. I mean, is there a specific moment that hooked you to SEO?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I mean, I would hesitate to. I don't know what the experience is from your side, but I also find that even people who are looking, who throw the buzzword of SEO around, have very little knowledge of it.
Yeah.
And but it is definitely the cool thing to throw around now, especially with the advent of AI and how that's changing things. But what I think is interesting is that people are shifting their way in which they understand digital. And what I think has happened is that as we've matured as marketers, we've understood that there's value in building your own asset instead of jumping on everybody else's. And so to have a home, to have something to come back to, and to build that as your main communication point, and your storytelling has huge value. And so that I think all culminates into content and SEO for a lot of people, so the word around, and then that's how we end up in business, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. And as an expert yourself, what would you say is working right now in SEO that most people still haven't really caught on to?
Yeah. So we have a bit of I don't really know if this is controversial. I think it is because the general rule of thumb and kind of the general conversation that's out there is in a very particular way. What you do in SEO are the following things. We don't particularly prescribe to any of that. I think the biggest difference is that we place less and less value on backlinks, and more value on content. which a lot of people find very surprising. Um, but we kind of banked into the space a couple of years ago, and what we found is that if you actually prioritize content, so if you do content well, if you build a good cornerstone strategy, you build a good internal linking structure, you build a good site, and you deal with the majority of the technical that you need to, so that your site is at least in good shape,
Yeah.
and you do content well, and it's well structured. You set yourself up for such a good base on SEO. And if your strategy around your content aligns with what I call your economic values, your business goals, like what do you want to sell, then it's very evergreen. And you build both a short term and a long term play for the space in which you want to own online. So I kind of say, what do you guys like? What do you want to be famous for? So our conversation very much shifts away from trying to get a rank, and more about building your visibility inside the area in which you want to be famous for, and owning that space and becoming the professional that you need to be. And that is more easily done and more sustainable with the right content strategies than it is with backlinking. I've been on both sides of that. I've written articles and had blog posts and done the whole guest posts and owned the sites that sent them out and done them. And then I've also bought backlinks. And I know that the whole system is flawed. So it's easy for me to purchase a backlink as a user, and then for that backlink to disappear. And it's almost impossible for me to track which one disappeared, which one I paid for, and which one I didn't. And so there's this massive gray space which the whole backlinking industry relies on. Um, and, uh, and yes, backlinkings work, but the sustainability of them, you still see this happening in people's ranking, even with backlinking. But if you took what people invest in backlinking and told them, let's invest that in content, you would see less of that wave. You would see a more consistent growth in visibility. And that's that was the hypotheses we threw out there a couple of years ago. That's what we've been doing. And I don't think I've run a backlinking campaign in the last 2 years.
Wow.
And our client growth projects have been really, really great. I think we've been, I don't know if it's because we've been more focused or it's because that focus on content is just better. It's one of the two. But
Yeah.
I think, no, that's statistically, we're getting much stronger visibility for our clients and online traffic and business goals being met, etc. All off the bat of that, just by focusing on the right content and strategies and structures.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
then-
It's yeah.
Yeah, carry on.
No, it's so interesting that you say that because obviously you know Neil Patel, right? And I saw a post where he said it's not SEO, it's not search engine optimization anymore, it's search everything optimization. And he was saying that content is key. And it's so interesting that you're saying this because it's no longer just Google. You know, people are all for social media, and there are so many social media platforms. And not only that, you're killing two birds with one stone.
Yeah. So what we often suggest to our clients, and to be honest, I think it's too far removed from the general marketing processes. But if you've got a good SEO content strategy, it becomes the bedrock for a great SEO strategy. And you can automate and repeat that in social circles, and you can ease the burden on the marketer to create a new content plan every month, as an example.
Yeah.
And we did a lot of social media for a lot of big brands and a lot of smaller companies, and we did a lot of it. And this whole content plan thing, I'll tell you now, as an agency, it's a very lucrative way to make money, because you lock people into retainers. They feel the need to constantly update and put new things in and to design and to copy, and you can hire a big team to do a lot of content. And we made it again a couple of years in around that same time. We made the decision to step straight out of that whole content management, content planning space, because we just felt that we weren't generating the same sort of revenue-based value,
Yeah.
creating content and just keeping communities engaged. But if you could engage a community on your economic value off the back of content that's evergreen, that was a whole different ballgame. And I think that's when we made this content shift, we were able to now play a revenue game with SEO.
Mm.
So we have some case studies that we released last year that show that, like, in certain sectors, like the SEO lead value contributed like a $250 million a month onto someone's bottom line.
Wow.
And that's great to see that, because you can now lock it down to content, you can lock it down to journeys.
Yeah, that's
It
incredible.
made a big difference.
Definitely. And when it comes to, let's say, Google, right? And Google rankings, everyone wants to be on that first spot. And especially lately with all of the Google algorithm updates, how do you future proof your SEO strategies for your clients?
Content.
As well. And just for the viewers out there, if you say content, is it going to be written content, visual content, a bit of both?
So yeah, so we focus a lot on written, and so cornerstone, well structured page structure. So just the background is that we are CRM HubSpot partners and WordPress developers, and we have WordPress partnerships with Kinsta, and then we also partner with a couple of other tools. But because of those tool sets in our base, WordPress is obviously a strong tool set that we use, and in our markets, we tend to find that guys want to do SEO, but they don't want to invest in content at like scale. So then the best bang for buck on content is written content. And so we will do a lot of written content, but the key behind the content is the hierarchy that you're building within your site, and the value behind that content. So we're not talking about producing blog articles every month for the sake of producing blog articles. You've got to actually build content that people are seeing get ranked, actually providing organic traffic back to your website, and then architecturally inside your site are showing Google what's going on. So your structure, your architecture, all of that is really important. And what I find is that future proofing is a very fancy way of just saying create sustainability. And what people don't realize is the most sustainable things to do for your business are often the most redundant. So listen to the way that Google wants you to structure a website, and you will have sustainable content strategy.
Yeah.
But run after every single new trick in the book, and you don't have a sustainable strategy.
Yeah.
And so what pivoted our understanding of SEO and our ability to be able to deliver on SEO was when we started to realize we have to take our knowledge as business strategists and build SEO into that, and treat SEO as a business tool.
Yeah.
And the day that happened, everything shifted for us, because we could literally say, well, in business, you don't chase every trend. You make decisions about what you are. You focus on the products you're selling,
Yes.
and you are pedantic about making sure that people understand that. And if you build that structure into your site, it's mind blowing what ends up happening.
Definitely. Definitely. Would you say a website is your foundation? I mean, no matter how in place things are and how amazing your strategies are, I mean, if you don't have a good performing website, how would that affect your rankings?
Yeah. So there's two reasons why I would say website is your foundation. The first is it's the asset you own, and it is the thing that you're going to find in search engines. Okay. So that's the first thing. And you want people on your assets. Again, I said we're CRM people, so our I actually want that traffic on the site. I want the returning visitor. I can see the journey. When I can see the journey, I can leverage a sales team to help that journey along. So in that game for me says gotta put them on a platform you own. Okay. So that's the one thing. The other thing is the problem with other platforms. And so I like to go back to, I don't know, I can't actually pinpoint exactly when this what happened, but this probably happened about 8 or 9 years ago. I don't know if so. When everybody got into social media, it was all about follows on your page, holding a community, generating organic content that people loved. And the reason for that is it's because it worked.
Yeah.
And and that's actually why I got into social media, was because I loved this idea that the way in which people were buying, the way in which people were communicating was changing, and all of this. What Where the big problem was is there's no money in communities.
Yes.
There's zero money in building a community. It's why some of the most valuable properties in the world are actually NGOs.
Oh.
So it's my community perspective, you know,
Yeah.
because there's no money in it. You can't monetize that conversation easily.
Mm.
And the pressure comes on because all of these social media platforms have been highly invested in, now need to return investments back.
Mm.
What's the quickest way to take your millions and millions size database and monetize it with advertising?
Mm.
But advertising doesn't work on follows on page and engagement, and you can't monetize that. You can monetize impressions and clicks.
Mm.
And so, what changed? Literally almost overnight, Google's reporting metrics page that they show you went from showing you how many followers you had, how your engagement rates were looking, how your community was, et cetera, to this is how many impressions you've received, this is how many.
Yeah.
And you had to search and go deep to try and figure out how many followers your page had.
Yeah.
And the problem with this is that if you had built a business strategy, which is a good idea, to build a business strategy around building community, okay, if that was your strategy, Facebook was no longer your friend, because Facebook doesn't help you build a community anymore. It helps you access really, really cool people that can be your customer and generate a lot of impression to then build that. And it has its place in the structure, and it's now making good money, and it can sustain itself, and well done to all of them. But what they are no longer doing is what they first set out to do.
Mm.
So we go and build we were platform based, and we were pushing everybody, which is what a lot of people were doing. They were building their whole e-commerce strategy on Facebook. If we were doing that and then they shifted their strategy, we would have to shift our strategy with Facebook. And that's never a good idea, to have a business strategy that has to shift when somebody else shifts theirs.
Mm. True.
Um, and so whether we're talking SEO or marketing or content or whatever, your website needs to be that base, because that's what you can control.
Yeah. Beautifully said. Beautifully said. I'm going to shift this conversation because here's a big thing as an agency owner, right? How do you deal with clients who want fast SEO results?
We don't take them on.
Okay. Simple.
Yeah. So again, this all happened sort of 3 to 5 years ago, but we were aggressively growing. And so we fell into this trap of like taking on every client, because we had lots of people to feed, and all of the rest of it. And what I realized is that when you do that as an agency, you, sorry, I had to just turn this up. My vet is calling.
No problem.
And now the interconnected world we're in, it calls on every device that we have. So
Yeah. It's a good and a bad thing.
are not silent. My computer keeps going. Sorry about that.
Not at all.
So okay, so what happened was we ended up in this, and which all I know a lot of agencies that are in this space. You're constantly hunting for new work because you have teams that you're trying to feed.
Yeah.
And so when you lose work, you got to bring new work on. You're constantly in that thing of like close more contracts.
Yeah.
And the problem is you become less picky about the kind of work you take on. So you take on every problem, and you're like, well, no, we'll figure it out. We've got smart people, and that's all great. It's a model that a lot of agencies do, and some of them are doing really, really well off the back of it. But what I realized I couldn't do was that I couldn't actually take on clients where the groundwork that they were laying in front of us was setting us up for failure.
Yes. Mm.
So there were two things we changed. One was what we would say no to,
Mm-hmm.
and two was the structure of our business so that we were a lot more agile. We were smaller internally. We could morph quite a bit bigger with freelance teams or independent contractors or partners. We started working with specific software partners so that we could build a depth of knowledge instead of trying to work with lots of all our clients will come in and say, I'm on this, I'm on that, I'm on that. It's like, that's great. You're going to have to move to our platform. And the reason is because this is where our depth of knowledge is. And this is how we succeed. And clients want you to succeed, but they also have this ulterior motive in the back of their head, which is they want you to succeed in their way.
Yeah.
Um, and and I and you've what I've learned is we've got to look out for that right in the front.
Mm.
And it and we've gone as far as when clients start pushing their agenda so hard that it means that we're no longer going to commit. We're not going to be able to deliver on what they're actually asking us to do. We will sit down with them and talk this through. But eventually, if there's no win, we will exit the account, because unless there is clear value and an understanding of why and how you do your job, and that if the client listens to that and understands that and respects that this is the process that gets you where you need to go, then you've got a good relationship. But if it's not, then you have a whole different story on your hands.
Definitely.
And so I think that that's what's important, is that another way to phrase this, which is a nicer way of looking at it, is to understand that not everybody is your client.
Mm.
And having a great sales pipeline helps you distinguish which are your clients and which ones aren't, so that you can bring your actual clients on.
Yeah.
You don't have to bring every deal on the planet. You just need to bring on the ones that you can do well with.
Yeah. That way it's a win-win situation. Definitely. And what is a client win that you're particularly proud of? Something that really made an impact for you?
We this happened accidentally for us, but we do quite a lot of work with startups. And I think it's because we are one and we understand them. We understand the pitfalls in marketing a startup, particularly like how, and because we are focused on both the marketing and sales journey, we can guide on both sides, because like I said, like our game is essentially in revenue, and we do SEO because it's such a huge piece of being able to drive that.
Yeah.
But because that's the game that we're in, we do a lot of work in that startup space. So I really like working with companies that do that. We're busy working with a company in Miami at the moment, and that's been really great. I can't tell you who, unfortunately, but and it's not because it's a massive account. It's because we're working with a team that's so they work with their development teams are kind of scattered all over the world as well, and but we're working with a team that understand the value that we bring. They expect the value that we want, and they communicate to us quite effectively around when things shift and change in their world. And so we've been able to kind of give them a content strategy you can pivot off the back of, but that's quite structured and solid. And it's still early days, but we can already see the impact that it's having in their business model.
Yeah.
And start to see that coming to, that's great. And I also have this pessimistic thing in the back of my head with all of our clients. I like to like review whether they were great or not, like a year or two down the line, because then if we,
Yeah.
that's a good client,
Yeah.
Um, so, um, so yeah, so the whether or not we can case study something and put the numbers out there, I think is valuable for me. We've done some really nice. We had a great client uh, in the financial sector space, where the problems were unique. They were well known for their brand name, but not anything else, and so they got a lot of business for their brand, but not actually for the product. And so the SEO job was to build the product knowledge and to build the product leads and that. So we did that really effectively, and that was the one that generated a good couple, about 500,000 on the bottom line on that. So those are the stories that count. I don't. What I've stopped. I think this has just been because I've been an agency owner for a long time now.
Yeah.
I don't chase the brands.
Yeah.
I like to find the unique problems that we can solve. And I like to find businesses that want to grow and that are excited. Those businesses are exciting to work with. And those are accounts that it's not the size of the account, it's the impact of the work that we do that can make a big difference. And that little switch clicked in my head a couple of years ago.
Definitely.
I used to wake up and do what we call feed the monster.
A monster.
Just hunt business so that we can get the money in and feed the monster. Today we said, nah, let's not feed the monster anymore. Let's find the work that we know how to solve. Then it's not the name of the client that matters. It's the problem you're solving and the growth that they get. So that's exciting. And I can honestly say that the last 2 years we've brought on clients that I've been really excited to bring on. There isn't a particular one from anyone else. Yeah.
I love it. Super valuable. Super valuable. And Mike, I'm going to end off with two flashy, quick questions, a little bit more on the personal side, because I know being an agency owner and an entrepreneur, agency burnout is real. So how do you stay energized and focused without burning out?
So you're asking the guys that had 2 burnouts to tell you how not to have a burnout.
Coming back strong.
So I can give you this advice, and I could put this on the table. I'm a classic workaholic. I pretty much live for 2 things: family and work. Like that's like I've had to actively force myself to develop hobbies in life, because work is my hobby.
Work is your hobby.
Yeah. And when people talk to me about what I'm frustrated about, it's because I'm frustrated I don't have enough time to work on things that work. Like that's what I'm frustrated by. Other people would be frustrated about things that are way more interesting in life, but that's the type of stuff that frustrates me. I wish I had more time, things that I do at work, and burnout's been, let me put it this way, stress is an interesting character in a person's life. So stress is actually one of the most valuable friends you can have in your journey as an entrepreneur, because it's what gets you up in the morning. It's what makes you do get things happen. It's the thing that incentivizes and pushes you to do something. Because contrary, I think, to popular belief, I think most entrepreneurs are actually quite lazy people. And they get a lot done because they have to. They've put themselves in these situations where they have to get things done. And so they get things done. And that's actually what makes them good at what they do, is that if they have to get it done, they'll find a way, they'll make a plan, it'll get done. But if you gave them an option, they would really prefer that the team just handle everything and they could have the day off, or that they didn't have to deal with today's problems. So stress is a good ally for an entrepreneur.
Okay.
Problem is that stress starts to morph its position and starts to tell you things that aren't true. And that's when that whole anxiety thing starts to step in. And so that's why a lot of guys who get this right exercise well, eat well, do well, all of those things. So for me, um, my biggest thing is being sleep. I can immediately, I can tell when my brain starts to think stupid things, and the more you play with stress, the more you work with stress, the more you realize you start to hear the differences between a logical argument and an illogical one. And when those illogical conversations become more and more frequent, I prioritize sleep because that's in my makeup. When mates will prioritize, they'll just hit the road and go for a run. And that's their system. You know, you've got to know your system and you got to know how to deal with what's going on in your world. So stress is an interesting one, and burnout is a tough one. I can tell you that I've ended up on antidepressants twice for burnouts, but in my most stressful scenarios later in life that I've had to lead the team and the business through much worse than what I've had to deal with before, I haven't needed to end up on any antidepressants. And it's purely because I've got I've learned how to have a conversation with this thing called stress. And I've learned it and what it needs and why it's there, why I need it, but why it can be dangerous at the same time.
Yeah.
And finding that balance, um, which is hilarious that I'm using the word balance because I don't think the word exists. But finding a mechanism to be able to deal with and converse with stress is important,
Yeah.
and being able to prioritize yourself. So I don't work at night. I switch off at 6 at the latest, and that's me done. I wake up the next morning carrying all day, not because I don't have things to do, not because there's no stress, not because there's like, I just know that it takes me 4 hours for my brain to stop working for me to actually fall asleep. So if I work until 10, I lie in bed till 2.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you've got to figure yourself out. You got to figure out how this thing works. And then when I wake up in the morning, I'm feeling better. I can tackle the day. And I've also had to let go of this thing that I will always have it done, because I think the number one thing an entrepreneur is good at doing is adding shit to their to-do list,
Yeah.
because we always see cool things that we could be doing better. That's our gift. So there's always stuff on our to-do list, and it never ends. We're never going to get. What we have to do is balance, take wisdom in this thing called there's our strategy and there's our resources.
Yeah.
That's our job. How do we leverage the resources we have to input into the strategy? And all these cool ideas, write them down, bank them, they'll be useful one day, but focus on what you have. And when you limit your work time, your resource, it becomes a lot more purposeful as you start to impact your strategy. We work on too many things that don't matter as entrepreneurs. So forcing yourself to look after yourself,
Yeah.
and finding what that is the key to all of it. And I can almost guarantee that all the entrepreneurs that are listening to this are going, yeah, that's cool, that's cool. And then they'll all have their burnout, and then they'll learn it their own way, and because that's what we do.
Yeah.
That's
Very interesting.
that's the ilk of.
Yeah, it's a gift. It's a gift and a curse. All right. Well, my last thing is to just leave the audience. If you want to leave the audience, let them know what you're busy with currently, and if there's anything else you would like them to know.
So I think what interests me and what I'm busy with now, if we look at it purely from an SEO perspective, is I think what is really interesting today is that I think SEO has shifted from ranking to authority, and building your authority in a topic. And like you said, it's the SEO of everything. It's not just the search engine itself. And I think when you start playing an authority game, the wins are bigger. The shift is different. It's a lot more tangible inside people's businesses. And so I think what we're doing in this landscape and what Google's doing with all their changes and updates and clarity on things, I think are heading us in the right direction. We're no longer tasting this like dark magic. We're doing things that mean something in people's business, and a bit of dark magic in there sometimes, but we can actually make a difference now because of this this focus on priority.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if there's anything else that would like you guys to know, hey, the future of all marketing sits in data. So if you can't get your data infrastructure right, you can't actually see what's going on in your journey, focus on that before you do anything else, because otherwise you're wasting money.
I love that. I love that. Mike, thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for just dropping gold nuggets all the way, valuable all the way. And good luck with the rest of your journey. And yeah, thank you for joining.
Thanks a ton, Bradley. Have a good one. Keep up. Cheers.